Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is co-host Daniel McAdams. Daniel, good to see you today.
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
I'd like to talk about the drone warfare that's been going on for 10 years or so. And not too much conversation, but recently there was a major achievement claim that they had killed an al-Qaeda leader of Saudi Arabia or the Arabian Peninsula. But it turns out that it wasn't so much of a great victory, that it was almost accidental, and yet they were sort of implying this was a great victory. But in June, this happened. This leader was killed. But Truth Out put a good article out on this very issue, and it says, thanks to reliance on, quote, signature drone strikes, U.S. military doesn't know who it's killing. Well, I thought these drones were supposed to target people that they knew, and they had people helping on the ground. This was going to limit the warfare and make sure the war could be accomplished without endangering us. But what is going on here with this signature drone? It certainly isn't signature in the sense that they know who they're targeting, but the record is pretty lousy. The statistics are bad, and it looks like it may even well be accelerating.
Well, according to another report, the drone strikes in Afghanistan from just in July were equal to all of the strikes from January all the way up through June. So they are accelerating. They continue to accelerate. But you're right, this use of signature strikes, I think most people don't understand that when these drones don't target known individuals, they target certain behaviors rather than suspects. And so if there's a house where they see people gathering that fit the signature, and it includes gatherings of men from their teens to their middle age, if they're traveling together, or if they're carrying guns, which is very, very common in parts of Pakistan, these are considered legitimate targets. And they don't even know until the end whether they were right or not.
Right. Anybody that's of age, where they could be, they are to be a target, and they are criminal, and they deserve to be killed according to our policy. But the conclusion to this is, unless posthumously intelligence proves them innocent. So, they're going to grant that they made a mistake and they were innocent after they kill them.
Yeah.
That makes a heck of a lot of sense.
And they wonder why we're so unpopular.
Yes.
But this June strike, where they didn't know who it was they were killing, this follows a couple of other high-profile ones that, in a way, fortunately, although unfortunately, the strike in April that killed the two hostages. There was such an uproar over this, especially because one of them was an American aid worker and was an Italian aid worker. There was such an uproar, but that the Obama administration felt it had to explain a little bit more than it had, because these are done in absolute secrecy. And so they pointed out that they had no idea who was in this compound. They had just identified it as an al-Qaeda compound, and that's why they hit it, and that's why they attacked it. So there's no they don't know if there are civilians in the vicinity or what. It's targeted, and that's what happened. And this also happened back in January when another American, this Adam Gadon, was killed. It was also by accident. They had no idea who was in the compound. They identify a place as a compound. It could be maybe the women are bringing lunch or the kids are playing outside or what have you, but it's a compound, it's a target, and it gets hit.
Well, I think this is very, very dangerous, because it's justified by saying it's limiting warfare. They don't drop bombs and they won't kill innocent people, and we can target individuals. Now, one of the early ones, or a few years ago, al-Awlaki, an American citizen, was targeted on purpose. But then the cousin or the nephew was also killed. He probably was intended, but he was collateral damage, and that is, they just put up with this, and they say that's part of the process.
Yeah. Well, the Guardian newspaper has done a lot of good reporting, and they pointed out that, men loading fertilizer into a truck maybe making a bomb, but they also may just be farmers. And so when you have this lack of precision, for another example, they track SIM cards, the things in your phone that give you location. And so you may be a terrorist with your phone, you may have left it in a restaurant, you may have loaned it to your kid or what have you, but so tracking this technical data rather than the person also results in a lot of people being killed. And we've seen that now, I think, over 5,000 have been killed in Obama's term of office.
It's sort of fighting pseudo-war. It's vicious and people die, but it isn't like you know, there's an enemy, they've declared war against us, we declare war against them, we know who the target is, we fight and we get over it. And yet, we're so engaged in being the policemen of the world. Americans don't want it, and the people around the world don't want us to assume that we should invade. So, and the American people have been disgusted with it, so they're holding back. You know, even when the bombing of Syria was considered, the American people said no. But this is contained, it's restricted. It looks like you can do this and it will achieve what we want. And it reminds me a little bit about how sanctions go, short of war. And I think sanctions are very serious because when you deny people raw products and medicines and things, that to me is enough for a person to feel like they're being, a war has been declared against them. But this, people in Congress who generally would like to see themselves as anti-war will go along with sanctions and they'll say, oh yeah, this will be limited. Well, the one thing it guarantees is they won't win anything, but we're going to lose a lot. We lose a lot of money, we lose lives, we create more hatred. And matter of fact, you know, if you look at the statistics about suicide among our veterans, people who run these drone missiles sites are susceptible to it too, because there must be an effect on them. I mean, they're not even in the battlefields, and they didn't have to worry about stepping on mines, but they still come back with their minds all shaken up and end up committing suicide. So this cannot replace it, but the neocons may well say agree with this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they agree with that, and that's why we don't like to mess around. We want to send in the troops. Sure. I mean, a guy like Lindsey Graham, you know, will be yelling and shouting about sending the troops, and he's already taken that position. But when the trouble comes, I'm afraid that the propagandists will finally find some incident that will be emotional enough to get the American people to go along with this, and they totally forget about the process. That's what's disgusting about how we flaunt the restrictions placed in the law, which is the Constitution, that we should go easy. But the concept of us being the policemen of the world and that we can fight these little skirmishes, and then they say, well, this will accomplish it, but it really makes us less safe.
Yeah, you know, the media loves to propagandize Americans. They love to give a good news story. We killed an Al-Qaeda leader, but why does it seem like another one always pops up? You know, it's like they're dealing with the symptoms and not the cause of the problem.
Right, and it's propaganda, and unfortunately, I think it's the source of a lot of problems. But back to my old argument, which I use frequently, is, what would the American people think if in their neighborhood they had just heard that a drone missile fell on an individual but killed 10 innocent people, and it came from a foreign government that had a foothold in our country, and they were launching them from our own country. It's a foreign government. Do you think all Americans, Republicans and Democrats and independents, would come together and say, get rid of the foreigners? And I think that's all that this does. And yet we never seem to change. We get somebody in like Obama, who's supposed to be more for peace, and here he is in a major war. Matter of fact, that drone was in Yemen. Mm-hmm. He's all for that war. Now he wants to expand the war in Syria, and these drones are hitting Pakistan still, and Afghanistan and Somalia. But the principle is still there, and that is going to continue. And unfortunately, I think we're going to be more vulnerable.
Yeah, you know, I think we mentioned this in an earlier show, but there was this study a couple of years ago by Stanford and NYU Law School about the effects of drones on the population in Pakistan and Afghanistan, and it found that, not really surprising, but it found that the physical harm that it does aside, the effect that it has on the population is to terrify them. They wander around in a constant state of terror, of fear, as we would if, you know, we're here in South Texas. Just think if every month or every couple of weeks someone got hit in our vicinity. Out of the sky. Out of the sky.
Yeah.
And even if there were some bad guys that we were happy they got killed, we would still be up in arms and terrified about this. The other thing that the human rights group Reprieve did a study, and they found that 28 unknown people were killed for every targeted person by drones. So 28 people have no idea who they are for everyone we mean to kill.
Well, of course, afterwards, our government may check and find out that they weren't, terrorists and they weren't combatants. But what good does that do? The damage has already been done. And you say, well, it's one individual. No, it's maybe for one person, there's going to be dozens and dozens, friends and neighbors and relatives, and all these individuals are going to be, motivated to try to stop us, and they turn their anger toward us.
And have we had any achievement? What have we achieved since President Bush started it? Obama accelerated it in all these years. Are any of these countries any more stable than they were when we started? Are we any safer? Or are they any more pro-American than before?
I don't think that anything's been achieved and a lot of harm was done. But some conspiracy people say, well, that's deliberate. They can't be that stupid. It can't have that many unintended consequences. But that remains to be seen, because we know what the facts are. The facts are that we're engaged here and we're doing these things, and they don't like it, and it doesn't seem to go away. It seems to be expanding, and it boils down to our foreign policy. I think that unless we address our overall foreign policy, these problems are going to continue. How silly this can be doesn't get out on the news. It's not going to be on the TV and riling up the people and say, hey, quit this. We don't need these drones. We don't need to be constantly in these countries around the world. But it has to be a fundamental philosophic change, not change into something brand new that we never heard of. It has to be a revisit to the principles that the founders talked about. And they're simple, and they're based on morality, and that is friendship with other nations and trade with other nations, and stay out of entangling alliances. That is what we need to do. We need to stay out of these alliances, and yet every single day, not only do we see the consequence of being in these entangling alliances, it seems like we're getting into more and more. That will not be the road to peace and prosperity, and hopefully we can wake up this new generation of Americans to say, enough is enough. It's time that we take care of our country and provide a strong national defense. For peace and prosperity, that is a necessity. Thank you very much for tuning in to the Liberty Report, and come back soon.